Wow, do you see these moths? Incredible, are they not? These are 6-spotted Burnet moths, or the Zygaena filipendulae. And today I'm going to teach you everything there is to know about these animals. Let's start the intro. Ladies and gentlemen, on this channel I bring you to the most extraordinary places in my country. Show you the most beautiful places in nature. Today is no such day because I came to a very ordinary roadside on the dike. See, this is my bike. I've ridden my bike here. But what I'm here to show you is a day-flying species of moth. The funny thing about nature is sometimes we see nature where we least expect it. You don't always have to go to the natural reserves of your country to find something interesting. Sometimes you see stuff along the roadside. So here we have the road. If we slowly tilt the camera, then here in the grass already I see what I came for. Can you guys see it? Oh, but this is just perfect. They're even pairing. Look, a male and a female pairing. Let me get a zoom in on this one. Wow. Can you guys see the close-up? So this is a day-flying moth in my country from the Zygaenidae family. And this is Zygaena filipendulae, the 6-spotted Burnet moth. Now, as the color of these moths suggests, these animals are highly toxic. In fact, they have cyanide or cyanogenic compounds in their body. It is said that these moths have enough cyanide to kill a small bird. And this is very typical for the Zygaenidae family. Some of them have the ability to biosynthesize cyanide from their diet. Now, these moths are indeed typically day-flying, and where you will find them in the Netherlands is like along grasslands, in the road. What's funny is in this part of the road they are very common, but in this side here they are not. That's because the grass here has been completely mowed. Can you guys see that? So they are absent here. But down here there are so many herbs and flowers, you will find them easily. Yes, that's true, ladies and gentlemen. This is Zygaena filipendulae, the 6-spotted Burnet moth. They are day-flying moths of the Zygaenidae family, or the family of Burnet moths. Zygaena filipendulae is a common species throughout Europe, parts of Russia and even small parts of Asia. The species can be found in areas that are rich in grasses and particular flowers. Reportedly, these moths contain enough cyanide to kill a small bird. They are generally left alone by vertebrate predators as far as I know. Zygaena moth larvae sequester cyanogenic glucosides from their food plants, and also de novo biosynthesize these compounds. De novo biosynthesis means producing these compounds themselves instead of directly taking them from their diet. Their bodies contain hydrogen cyanide in levels that is harmful to many predators if eaten. That's why their bright black and red colors are a warning. Don't eat me, I'm very toxic. This species seems to be heavily reliant on flowers, for they seem to require a lot of nectar and are constantly found feeding. Therefore, essential to this species and their conservation is the presence of flower-rich grassland. Among their favorites appear to be the flowers of knapweed, scabious and thistles. Some of you may be wondering, what's all the ruckus about? Why do these moths prefer this place in the roadside? Why don't they just go to some random forest? Well, it's all about this little plant here, you see, that's a good question. It's always good to ask ourselves why a particular species prefers a particular area. In the case of the six-spot Burnet moth, it's about this little plant here. This is Lotus corniculatus. It is bird's foot trefoil, Lotus corniculatus, and it is the host plant of the six-spot Burnet moth. So the moths that you just saw pairing will later lay their eggs on this little plant here. What's interesting is that their caterpillars, this moth only has one generation a year, will take almost a year to develop. The caterpillars will feed from the leaves, but at some point in time they will stop feeding and prepare for hibernation, only to continue feeding in spring and pupate. So without this little plant here with the beautiful yellow flowers, the Lotus corniculatus, the Burnet moth doesn't really reproduce in this area. Also interesting to note is that this little host plant is also the host plant of another butterfly such as the Icarus blue butterfly, Polyommatus icarus. It is family of peas and clovers, the Fabaceae. So it's a beautiful little plant, it produces a lot of nectar, very important plant for grasslands. The caterpillars hatch in summer, but enter hibernation after a few days, reawakening in April to resume feeding. When fully grown, they are yellowish-green, slightly hairy and marked with rows of conspicuous black spots along the back and sides. They feed on bird's foot trefoil or Lotus corniculatus in my country mainly. Yes, it's true. In my country, the caterpillars mainly eat bird's foot trefoil or Lotus corniculatus. Although this is not their only host plant, they can also use many of its relatives such as coronilla and other types of flower such as kidney veg. The pupa is formed within a wrinkled and shiny white or yellowish cocoon and usually spun high up a grass stem. These moths appear in summer. In my country, June and July is usually a good time to see them. What a lovely insect to see. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I found a special place in my country where I know many of them can be found in summer. Alright people, that's a good start of the episode, don't you think? Here's my bike. I'm gonna ride my bike. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the road here along the dike. And along the dike here you have these grassy roadsides. Sometimes there's cool species of butterflies and moths and flowers in them. I don't have any other particular mission. But the thing about nature is you have to go with the flow because you cannot always know what to expect. I'ma just follow the dike and see whatever we come across, I will film it. Roadsides, anything. Alright, so I'm on a pier in the Netherlands, in the river. And it's my favorite time of the day, it's time to have some food. And the food that I brought is very typically Dutch. Let me show you guys what it is. Da 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 da. I introduce you guys to the appelflap. Yeah, it means what it sounds like. It means apple and flap. I know, it's very silly. It's a Dutch pastry filled with apple, sugar, cinnamon and raisins. Well, raisins most of the time. It's very crispy, as you can see. Just look at that. See, now you guys know what Dutch people eat as well. Typically the pastry is very crunchy and it's covered with sugar granules. Can you see it? However, the filling on the inside is kind of like applesauce. The apple becomes almost completely liquid. There's like this sugary, fruity mixture in the middle. The TV can dissect it for science. See, here's the apple. You're not supposed to break them in half. But who cares? It's scientific research for YouTube. Weird, huh? The flavor is very sweet, very sugary, very fruity, also a little bit acidic, because apple is a bit sour. And also a little bit buttery because of the pastry. It's a good combination. Alright people, I rode my bike for a while and now I'm in the outskirts of an industrial terrain. So yeah, the places that I'm exploring today, like I said, aren't like the typical forests or natural reserves that I visit. It's literally just suburbs, industrial terrain, dikes, roadsides, the kind of rough urban vegetation. So we don't expect to see a lot of rare stuff here today. But what's interesting is this place is absolutely blooming with the bird's foot trefoil. Now, if you don't have a very short-term memory, you still remember this plant. We talked about it today. It's the host plant of the Icarus blue butterfly and the host plant of the six-spot Burnet Moth that we showed today on my channel. But what's interesting is the Burnet Moths here are nowhere to be seen. Oh, sorry. I just had a drop of sweat in my eye and it stinks because of the salt. I need a shower tonight. But what's interesting is the host plant of the Burnet Moth is abundant here. It grows absolutely everywhere around me. But we cannot see the moth anywhere. Why is that? Well, I don't think I have the direct answer to this question. I don't want to be the kind of YouTuber who instantly comes up with a theory. Such questions, they need biological research to come up with the answer and the kind of habitat that these moths prefer. But I do have a theory, which is just that, it's just a theory. So I think it's because the vegetation here is very low. Where we see the Burnet Moths flying on the roadsides along the dike, vegetation was very high. It was almost neglected vegetation. It was like very high grassland. And there was a huge diversity of flowers and stuff like that growing around it. But here it's just lacking. Here the vegetation is very low. And the reason the vegetation here is low is because I think it's being maintained, it's being mowed. The government, it maintains this area, and I think that they use mowing machines to keep the grass low here. And that basically destroys the eggs and the caterpillars of these moths that are laid directly on the plants. The caterpillars hibernate on the plant and they stay there for almost a year. So if during the wrong time of the year these plants are mowed down constantly, then the moths have no chance of survival. So it's interesting to see how the moths, they need more than just the correct plant. The whole environment, everything that comes with it, the level of vegetation, everything has to be correct for an insect to survive. I think that's pretty interesting. And here we see one of the many species of tern birds. These birds are very adequate at fishing and capturing live prey from water. What species is it? Sorry, I cannot exactly tell you what species of tern bird it is. I'm not a birdologist, okay? My specialism is moths, and in particular insects. If somebody knows the species, please write it in the comments so we can learn more. Well, I'm not sure what kind of animal made this, but it's pretty interesting to see the place where they've chosen to do it. Pretty sure it's a rabbit or something, I don't know. I'm not a mammal specialist, so... Don't know if you guys can see it, but look at the excellent diversity of bumblebees here in the trefoil. This truly is a wonderful plant for pollinators and insects. Not only butterflies and moths, as we can see, there's so many little bees and bumblebees and stuff on it. It's incredible. It's a pretty cool plant. Oh my god, she told me. Here's my bike, by the way. I'm literally just driving around here in these random areas. We went from industrial terrain to a somewhat wooded area. And I saw the sign and I just stopped because I had to film this. Guys, you know what the awesome thing is about making videos outdoors? Is that you never know what you're gonna find or expect. Most of this stuff is completely unplanned, but I found something really interesting. Eiken processi rups. That means oak processionary caterpillar. Literally word for word. Zygaena processi rups. Oak processionary caterpillar. And this is a warning sign because this is one of the most dangerous caterpillars of my country. They are one of the major Lepidopteran pests. And the caterpillars can be pretty noxious. Their hairs can create strong allergic reactions on your skin, such as itching, but also in your lungs. If you breathe the hairs, they can be harmful. And in my country, they've become somewhat of a plague over time. So let's wait for the cars to pass. So here's what's really funny. They put up warning signs against oak processionary caterpillars. And look what's behind the sign. Duh! Here they are. Tomato processionary. So this is official. A nest of oak processionaries. Do not touch. Wow. So this is one of the most quote-unquote dangerous caterpillars of my country. It's funny, here's another warning sign. And the caterpillars seem to like these signs a lot, because each time there is a sign, there's a freaking nest behind it. Good job, government, for giving these animals nice place to make a nest. Wow, it looks like many of them are pupating or shedding their skins. They do it together, and here on the stem of this tree is a massive nest. You can see it? Wow, that's a big nest of the oak processionary. Do not touch, people. I swear, this is not a friendly species. So why is this species so vilified? Why do people hate them? Why is there warning signs? How dangerous are these caterpillars? Okay, I'm going to be honest. On my YouTube channel I've raised some of the most venomous caterpillars in the world. I've been stung by some pretty bad species in my lifetime. If you don't believe me, just go to my channels. There's literally videos of me doing that. I've been stung by these guys as well in the past. And so in terms of long-term health effects, they're not very dangerous. Because I mean, in South America there's caterpillars, and if you touch them, you literally are at risk of dying. Like, they can be lethal. The oak processionary caterpillar, as far as I know, is not a species that is easily lethal or is going to give you long-term health effects. However, let's wait for the car to pass. However, the fact that something is not immediately deadly doesn't mean it's not dangerous. For example, beating somebody up. Imagine I use my fist and I beat you up. You may not die, but that doesn't mean it's good for your health. It's similar with this species. The hairs of these caterpillars, the problem is the hairs, they disperse, they float through the air. If there's a strong wind, they can blow the hairs away for many meters. So even me here sitting next to the nest can be dangerous. If there's strong wind, I can breathe in the hairs. These caterpillars can give very strong allergic reactions. They can give you an anaphylactic shock. That means if you are allergic, you will have to visit the hospital because your health will be at risk. Does that mean you're going to die? Well, that's a bit extreme, but if left untreated, who knows what could happen? The effects can be pretty bad. Second of all, there is the sensation of being stung by them. What does it feel like to be stung if you touch these caterpillars? Well, I've experienced it in the past, and let me tell you, it was one of the worst experiences I ever had. So, what's interesting is if these caterpillars affect you, it's not really like pain, but it's like an intense itching sensation. And let me ask you guys, have you ever been, has your body ever itched so much that it physically hurts? That's what it feels like. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And I'm not going to lie, this is one of the worst caterpillar species that I've been affected by personally. So I'm not going to touch them. I'm actually a little bit scared of them because I know what it feels like. You know, some caterpillars, they give you like a burning, painful sensation. But this sensation is such a strong itching, it's almost like, it's like torture, to be honest. I mean, you can take a hot shower over and over and the feeling doesn't go away. If it's really intense, then you will fail to sleep at night because you're itching all over. It's absolutely terrible. So if I had to give this species a rating of how dangerous it is, how deadly it is, I would give it a 3 out of 10. It's not really a deadly species or anything. However, if I have to give it a rating of how bad it feels, the discomfort that they give you, I give it a 9 out of 10. I've been stung by many caterpillars in my life, and this is like in the top 5. They're absolutely horrible and very, very annoying. Like, I wasn't able to sleep for a full night because the itching didn't stop. It's terrible. It's a 9 out of 10. How bad it feels to be stung by these guys, really. So if you ever see these guys in the wild, please don't touch them. Another thing is the hairs, they're able to disperse by the wind. A lot of caterpillars are only dangerous if you immediately touch them with your hand. But for this species it's different. Just being near them like I am right now is already dangerous. The hairs, even right now there's a small chance that I too can be affected. If the hair's blowing in my face and I breathe, it will be bad for my lungs, for my skin. Being around them is dangerous. So you don't even have to touch them to be affected by it. That's the dangerous thing. Cold and wet. So why are these creatures such a massive pest in my country right now? It's going out of control. Well, actually that's the fault of humans, believe it or not. It's not the caterpillar's fault. The mistake is a mistake made by humans and the way we manage our landscape. You see, here's the problem. The oak processionary caterpillar, it can only complete its life cycle on oak tree. As far as I know, oak tree, quercus, is the only plant that the caterpillars can eat. So what did our government decide to do? They decide to create a monoculture of oak trees. In my country, especially like 20, 30 decades ago, the government went on a rampage, planting oak trees everywhere. Why? Well, I guess it was like a form of landscaping, a form of decoration. Let's be honest, oak trees are beautiful trees. They get very tall, very old. I love oak trees. But when you plant nothing and nothing but oak trees, of course the species that benefit from these plants are going to propagate themselves massively, right? If you fill a warehouse full of cheese, you're gonna get mice. I know mice don't really eat cheese that much, but it's a metaphor, right? We make it exceptionally easy for these animals to become a pest. See, when you go into a forest, in the wild, in nature, you don't only see oak trees everywhere, you see a diversity of trees. You see lime trees, you see pine trees, you see willows, you see spruces, you see cherry trees. You see every kind of tree that there is mixed together. You see ash trees, you see maple trees. Instead, we created like these parks, forests, suburbs, only filled with oak tree, oak tree, oak tree, oak tree. Of course, it's a monoculture. Of course, these species are going to take advantage. Of course, it's our fault. It's not the caterpillar's fault. Second of all, we wiped out the predators of this species. You know how many birds and animals are able to eat these caterpillars? A lot of them. Wasps, birds, flies, many species prey on them. Here's a fun fact for you. Did you know many caterpillars of the processionary caterpillar, of the oak processionary caterpillar, die before making it to adulthood? Why? That's because there's an insane amount of parasites that can parasitize them. I'm pretty sure everybody on this channel who has a healthy interest in moths and butterflies knows about the parasites that can affect caterpillars. There are several species of flies, there are several species of wasps that can lay the eggs inside caterpillars and it will parasitize them. slowly eating them from the inside out. However, the problem is flies and wasps, they need more than only caterpillars to complete the life cycle. For example, flies and wasps, they have to drink nectar, for example, from flowers. So you don't only need the species they parasitize, you also need a landscape to support these parasites. Believe it or not, parasites can be super beneficial. Humans don't like parasites, we think they are gross, we think they are filthy, we are scared of parasites. But parasites do a wonderful job controlling populations of harmful species like this. So if you don't give wasps and flies a place to live, then the pests can grow out of control. Look guys, see this fly? Immediately I can give you a beautiful example of what I just said. This fly species here is actually a parasite. A parasite of the oak processionary caterpillars. And what this fly is doing right now is laying its eggs on the caterpillars and in the nest of the caterpillars. And the maggots of the fly will actually start growing inside the caterpillars and consume them from the inside out. It's almost like those xenomorphs in Alien vs Predator. Oops. Wow. You know that moment where the aliens burst out of the human's chest? Yeah, it's kind of gross, but it's what's gonna happen to these caterpillars. Each time this fly lays an egg, it has parasitized the caterpillar, and that caterpillar is not going to survive. And this is a beautiful example of nature controlling nature. And the parasites and predators of these caterpillars, like these flies, have been systematically wiped out by humans because they are more vulnerable than the caterpillars themselves. Guys, do you know what I love? When I'm in nature and I talk about something and immediately I'm able to show an example of the thing I just said. I was literally just talking about parasites and like clockwork, I encounter some of them. See, there are so many flies that are attracted to these nests. And this fly, I don't know how many eggs this fly can lay, but I bet most flies can lay at least like 100 eggs. So this fly may be able to take down many caterpillars from this nest. See, and it's not many people appreciate this because flies are gross and parasites are gross. But this is nature doing its job, people. This is what we need. So guys, I just named two very important reasons why this species has become a pest. 1. We plant oak trees everywhere, monoculture. 2. We wiped out their predators and their natural enemies. The species that prey on the caterpillar are species that humans have more or less made vanish from the landscape. So it's for free for all for these caterpillars. But there's also a third reason. And reason number 3 is going to make people a little bit uncomfortable, because every time I bring it up, there's gonna be a discussion erupting, but it's climate change. Yeah, I really don't care if you believe in climate change, it's pretty much a fact. I mean, every scientist agrees. And if you're not a scientist, I don't think I care about your opinion, because I don't think you are qualified to understand the subject. Now, this may sound like I'm a very arrogant asshole right now. You're not a scientist, so your opinion is invalid. But, you know, sometimes you have to hold your foot down, because we live in a day and age where every nutnik and pleb is able to influence the public opinion with their disgustingly misinformed opinions. And sometimes we have to take a step back and recognize it's better to listen to the experts than ourselves. The truth is that the climate is changing. Especially Europe is getting warmer and drier. Warmer and drier. What is this species like? This species likes it warm and dry. Yeah. So everything getting warmer and drier is bad news if you're a polar bear. But it's good news if you are an oak processionary caterpillar. For the past well, more or less almost every year in my country we are breaking heat records. It's scary, I'm only a 28-year-old man, and already I've been through so many historical heat records in my short lifetime. It's insanity. And these guys are loving it. So I think the problem with monoculture and the problem of supporting their natural enemies is a very easy problem to tackle. It's easily solved with better and more biodiversity in the landscaping. But the third reason, climate change, is a really complex one. And more or less requires the cooperation of the whole humanity as a species. Something that we are incapable of in many occasions. I mean, just look at the coronavirus pandemic. There's a pandemic of a virus that's killing people. And some people are too selfish to put a fucking piece of cloth on their mouth to prevent infecting other people. So if some people behave like chimpanzees that are selfish in this manner, how can we ever expect to tackle the bigger issues in the environment? I'm very pessimistic, but you know what? I'm going to try. I'm going to die trying to convince people to think otherwise, even though I'm just a YouTuber with a small amount of subscribers. Hey, just doing what I can in this world. Hopefully you have been informed. Last but not least, let's talk about the moths that these guys turn into. I don't have footage of the moths because for some reason I actually never seen the moths of this insect. The caterpillars are a complete plague, but I never see the moths. I wonder why that is. So let me show you a picture of it in the screen. Yeah, another car passing by, let's wait. I don't like talking if there are cars driving around, it distracts me a lot from what I'm trying to say. But the moths, they're pretty cute, I think they're pretty, they're quite hairy and they fly late in the year. So what happens when the moths will hatch is they will lay their eggs on the host plant, and the eggs they will hibernate. So the caterpillars of the oak processionary caterpillar are born early in spring, after hibernating in winter on the host plant directly. And when the oak plant in spring starts to grow its tiny young little leaves, that's when the caterpillars will be born and start growing again into what we see here. Now personally guys, I don't think there is anything such as bad species. There's no such thing such as good species. There is no good and bad. There is only diversity of species. There is no such thing as good and bad species, but there is such a thing as good and bad landscapes. Especially the landscapes that we manage. There is such a thing as bad landscaping with low biodiversity, which allows only a handful of species to propagate over the whole diversity of species. So yeah. See, the thing about nature is that nature requires a high amount of species to have many interactions with each other that keep each other in check. It's kind of like these Jenga towers. If you pull out too many pieces, then the tower will collapse and you have a fucking mess. That's what we are doing. We are driving species extinct. We are driving them away from their natural range. We are changing their habitat in ways they fail to survive. Anything from caterpillars to wasps to birds to bats to plants to amphibians to reptiles to just about anything you can imagine. So, and what happens if when we degrade the landscape is we are only going to be left with a small handful of species that are going to dominate the landscape, because the rest has been, all the competition is gone. It's just like a free-for-all for the few survivors that are left. It's just like how you go into big cities and you see like a million pigeons, right? It's very hard for birds to survive in the middle of a big city. Only a handful of species are able to do it. So the ones who can are going to propagate like insane amounts, because they're one of the few that can. Well, there you go. It's us. We are the problem. We are the problem. So I'm driving my bike around, I randomly see fire. Not sure what the deal with this is, but if a person did this in the middle of summer, that's pretty fucking stupid, because Thing about fires can spread fast. I hope not everything here literally burns down. And then the sun was going down and I was forced to go home. Thank you for watching this short but hopefully entertaining episode of me and nature. In the series Nature Vlogs I usually do not display the credits, but today I will, because it's important to honor the names of those who helped me crowdfund my demonetized content. Videos like these require a lot of time to make. And YouTube demonetized my channel. That means that when I upload a video and it gets many views, I don't get a single dollar, not a single penny out of it from YouTube. So I really have to ask people for donations if they like the show, unfortunately. But it's working because we have many sponsors. So therefore I will display the credits today, just to honor their names a little bit more.